So, for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Josiah Ingalls, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, challenging Ted Cruz for the Republican nomination. And today, I want to talk to y'all about school shootings. In my opinion, both the Republicans and the Democrats and their stupid rhetoric continues all of these mass shootings. The amount of mass shootings that we have had this year alone is unprecedented. There's been one for every day of the year. In fact, there's been more than one for every day of the year. And I'm tired of all this stupid rhetoric coming from both the Republican, my own party, and the Democratic Party. Y'all are fucking killing kids. Because both of you parties are trenched in and don't want to look at reason. They don't even want to really analyze the situation. Instead, they have their party rhetoric. They keep regurgitating that shit while children die. Well, and nothing gets done. It's bullshit. Hold on. The problem is this. Let's get to the real point. The Democrats are always saying, we don't want guns in school. Well, we live in a nation, in a world full of guns. Any facility that does not have at least an armed guard and is a gun-free zone is literally setting people up for mass slaughter. That's the reality. The Democrats are like, but it's going to traumatize the children. And we don't want to traumatize our kids. You mean to tell me you never take your kids to the bank? You mean you never take your kids to City Hall or the state capitol or to the airport? These places have armed guards. And it's not like what's in your head where people are carrying around AR-15s all over the damn place. No, they have a small handgun and they carry that and they're trained for that gun. But yet, you're going to let your kids go to the bank and City Hall and the state capitol and other places that have armed guard, and that's not traumatizing your kids. But if you have armed guard at the police, at the school, that is traumatizing your kid? That's a bullshit. And one step further, both Republicans and Democrats tell their kids, police officers are your friends. And you should trust a police officer. Every fucking police officer on duty wearing their uniform has a goddamn gun. You mean to tell me that having your kids around armed guards is traumatizing, but you're going to let your kid be around a police officer on duty in his uniform wearing his gun, and that guy's your child's friend? That's bullshit. It's like, I guarantee you, if you ask every single parent that has ever lost a child in public school or private school, any school that has had a shooting, where their child died, if they would rather their child have been exposed to an armed guard every single day in school in order to be able to have their child still alive, they would tell you hell fucking yeah. But instead, everybody's like, oh, I don't want my kid exposed to guns at school. You're being fucking selfish. That's what it is. You're not considering the loss of all of those children. You're not considering the parents that will lose their children tomorrow or next month or the month after that. You're only thinking about your child not being exposed to guns in a world full of guns. And the result is somebody else's kid is going to lose its life. Somebody else's kid is going to die. because you're being too selfish. That's the reality. School is not there for you to have your way all the time. The school is there for the best interest of the children, to protect the children. But when you get up and you go to your school board meetings and you protest that you don't want guns in school, but you're perfectly fine having your kid around a law enforcement officer or going to the bank or going to City Hall or going to the state capitol, you're a fucking hypocrite. And you're a selfish one as that, because more children are going to die. That's the reality. And then we have to, so I've spent some time bashing the Democrats. All right, now I'm going to bash my own party. My own party is guns everywhere. They want guns everywhere, no restrictions. Well, the sad reality is that America has abandoned mental health for so long that we're in a mental health crisis. And the reality is that we cannot have these types of weapons on the streets. And this is why. It's simple medical science. If an AR-15 bullet enters into a person's body and hits an organ, it will obliterate that organ, and it is not fixable. No amount of care at the ER is going to save that person. Instead, that person is dead. Whether they're still breathing or not, they're already dead. But if you arm yourself with a handgun, now doctors can take care of a handgun. They can try to save that person's life. The difference between a handgun and an AR-15 is a handgun is self-protection, and an AR-15 is outright murder, because there's no saving that person. That's the reality. So let's go back to Democrats. So, a lot of Democrats are always saying, well, we need gun restrictions. And I agree with you. You need gun restrictions. We all need gun restrictions. But the problem is this. You cannot take a gun away from somebody that already owns it. They already own it. It's unlawful seizure of somebody else's property. You cannot take their gun. That's the reality. But what can we do? We can pass real gun control legislation that can have bipartisan support. But that requires the Democrats to get off their high horse and recognize the opposite side. And it requires Republicans to get off their high horse and recognize the other side. Democrats are always saying that we need to ban AR-15s and assault rifles. But the problem is they want the government to still have them. They want all the law enforcement officers and police officers and sheriff officers and everybody else to have them, but not the citizens. But here's the fundamental problem with that. The Constitution guarantees the right to bear arms. That constitutional protection is also a protection against an overbearing government. And if Democrats do not want to acknowledge that simple fact, then we are never going to have bipartisan support for gun control. Common sense gun control. So the other day I was at the March for Your Lives event, and they're pushing for a ban on selling new sales of AR-15s to people under 21. I wrote to them and I said, that's not good enough. If we're going to have comprehensive bipartisan support for gun control, then the Democrats need to recognize that any restrictions on guns and ammunition must also apply to the government. Those restrictions must apply to every single branch of government except for the U.S. military and the U.S. Armed Forces, because at times of war, we're going to need those weapons. But in everyday life, we do not. We need to level the playing field. And you're going to hear a lot of police officers saying, but if we don't have those guns, what are we going to do about the bad guy? That's some cop-out bullshit. Law enforcement officers are trained with their weapons more than any other population of the United States on average. A good trained law enforcement officer can take out someone with an AR-15 with a handgun. And we've seen it multiple times with these mass shootings. Whether they're in schools or at Walmart or wherever, we've seen that happen several times, where a well-trained person with a handgun was able to take out somebody and make it where they couldn't no longer carry out their mission. Whether they killed that person or just shot them, they disabled them. So a law enforcement officer saying, oh, but we need those guns in order to protect you. That's some bullshit. Quit eating donuts, get on the goddamn treadmill, and stay fit. I cannot believe how many law enforcement officers I have seen that is overweight. I'm sorry, you cannot run down a bad guy if you are 40 pounds overweight. It's not going to happen, which means the only thing you're going to do is you're going to pull out your gun and you're going to start shooting people. And so, more cold-blood murder by the law enforcement. Because there's no requirement for law enforcement officers to stay physically fit. It's ridiculous. Both sides are at fault here. The Democrats are at fault. The Libertarians are at fault. The Republicans are at fault. Everybody's at fault. Because you're all talking rhetoric, but nobody wants to look at the common sense thing that's right in front of your face. And that is, because of the mental health disaster, we need gun control. We also cannot take guns away from people that already own them. So what can we do? All we can do is ban the sale of future guns, reducing the risk of this happening. And we can put armed guards in public schools. These things together can be a solution. But no, everybody wants to bitch and complain while children are literally dying every fucking day while y'all do nothing. And neither side wants to recognize the other side. The Democrats are always bitching that the Republicans don't hear their voices, that won't listen to reason. But on the other side, the Democrats do not want to listen to the rationale and reason of Republicans. I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter what party you're from. If you cannot recognize the legitimate fears and concerns of the other side, nothing, let me say, nothing will get done. And more children are just going to die tomorrow or the next day or the next day. We're always pissed as a society that our politicians don't do shit. They don't do shit because they're always up there giving the same politics rhetoric while never actually considering the legitimate fears and concerns of the other side. Both the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Green Party, and the Libertarian Party are all acting like fucking children when you're supposed to be the adults protecting the actual children. We as a society are tired. We are tired of our children being slaughtered down because the politicians can't stop their political party rhetoric and start getting solutions. We need solutions. We need people that are willing to reach the other side and say, let me hear your concerns. Let's figure out what we can do together. But instead, most all of our politicians don't want to do shit. They want to get up there in the limelight. They want to get up there in front of the camera, and they just want to talk their party rhetoric, and they want to raise money. Meanwhile, they let your children be the mechanism that allows your kids to be slaughtered down while they raise money. It's horrible. We need to stop the insanity. We need to come together as a nation and say we're not going to let this happen anymore. And we're going to do it in the best way we can while respecting people's constitutional rights, while respecting the other side's fears and concerns at the same time. And it's not too difficult. All we need is politicians that are in Washington willing to be the tough guy and willing to tell them, quit throwing a goddamn tantrum and do something. Because thoughts and prayers aren't going to save children. Thoughts and prayers aren't going to get solutions. We need someone that can do that. We need people that can do that. And I encourage you, if you're sick and tired of your politicians that don't really do shit, run for office. Make them afraid that they're going to lose their power. The only thing that politicians will really motivate behind is if they're going to lose their power. Because most all elected officials are shallow and they won't do anything unless they're likely to lose power. Write to your congressman, your House member, your Senate member, write to them and tell them you want them to stop acting like children and start recognizing the fears and concerns of the other side while simultaneously moving us forward to a solution. Enough is enough. How many more children must die in cold blood simply because our politicians won't do shit? They will only do what's inside of the political rhetoric of their party. Enough is enough. We need to stop this insanity today. We need to send people to Washington that's willing to do the job to keep people safe while simultaneously respecting the limits of government and respecting the Constitution. We cannot trample the Constitution in order to save children. We cannot save children without recognizing the fears and concerns of all sides. What I am proposing is not unreasonable. And those that yell from the mountaintops that it is unreasonable are being selfish in some way, shape, or form. Quit being selfish. Let's come together. Let's solve this and let's be done with it. Let's make it where children no longer fear for their lives when they go to school. We also have a responsibility to teachers. We have a responsibility to make sure that the workplace that they work in is safe. Just like every other business in America has a legal responsibility to do so. And the failure to put armed guards in school to protect the teachers at least is a violation of federal law that mandates that employers must have a safe environment for their employees. With the high rate of gun shootings, no longer having armed guards in school puts those teachers at an unnecessary risk of injury, of death. And that alone violates the law. If we're going to be a nation of laws, then we must follow the law. We must consider the law in finding solutions. Solutions are possible if we can come together and quit acting like damn children, throwing a tantrum because you ain't getting 100% of your way, when what matters is the lives of these children in schools. That's what matters. Let's come together. Let's solve this. There are easy solutions if everyone can just look at the humanity of the other side instead of just looking at what you want. Instead of just looking at the other side as the other, or as Democrat or Republican, quit looking at the other side as if they're the enemy. When the true enemy is adults acting like children, throwing a tantrum because they cannot get their way, meanwhile children die. How can we continue to go down this path with absurd arguments for and against every possible proposal? Every proposal, for or against, somehow, some way, I see selfishness in it. Quit being selfish and let's save the children from more deaths, more trauma of having to live through another school shooting. It is sad that our society has reached the point that we can't even protect children in schools because we are so politically divided that neither side can see the humanity of the other side. For all of the parents that have lost their children, let me say for all of them, quit having a tantrum and let's prevent this from happening anymore. Let's end this never-ending behavior of school shootings. We've got to end it. We've got to save these children. We've got to protect them. It reminds me of something that happened years ago. I was waiting to get my eyes tested, and I grew up in a very Republican family that there was a lot of animosity against Hispanics, especially Hispanics that don't speak English in America. And I saw this couple with their daughter sitting there, and their son came in. Grandma brought in the son. I'm assuming it's grandma. And the son ran over and hugged his daddy. And in that moment, I realized that even though I didn't speak their language, and even though I didn't know much about their culture, I didn't have to. Because we all share the same culture. We love the people that are in our lives that we care about. We all love our families. We all have the same humanity deep within us, regardless of party and regardless of language. So can't we draw on that humanity that we have in common and come to a solution? A solution that will get bipartisan support, while simultaneously telling the few people that yell from the mountaintops how they want it to be only their way to quit being selfish. If we could only see the humanity of the other side, we could have solutions in such a fast pace that it would be unprecedented. I'm asking you, as a U.S. candidate, as a candidate for the U.S. Senate, I'm asking you, as a parent, look within yourself. See the humanity of the other side. Quit being selfish, and let's save some children from dying. For God's sakes, think about the children instead of your own selfishness. Thank you.